Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. And with me, as always, is Dave and Fredo, and I'm Aaron. Hi, guys.
Hello.
And we're not going to talk football. That's enough. But other than that, how's your guys' week been? The weather is getting nice in New Orleans. It is gorgeous today. It's going to be even more gorgeous tomorrow.
We are approaching the like maximum quality weather where you're like, oh, it's pleasant to be outside and you want to be outside, and then you hit that curve of, okay, now it's getting warm. Now it's a bit toasty. Now it's warm. Now it's, oh my gosh, okay, here comes the sweat. And
I remember a
before you
couple
know
of
it,
years ago, it was like 32 degrees on Mardi Gras Day. So, yeah.
oh, do you remember when we were outside for Muses all those years ago, and we're all bundled up and packed up and scarfed and gloves and everything?
Yeah, we really had to tough it, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, not as bad as the year we where it was rain and it was cold.
Yeah, that's bad too. But
That was really bad. So
oh
anyway,
yeah, like I said, but weather is nice. But so tonight we had to punt on some plans, so we're just going to have fun and watch the most probably controversial Star Wars movie. Well, no, we'd have to have a podcast on what's the most controversial Star Wars movie. Would it be this one or Rise of Skywalker or Last Jedi? Because I think those would probably be the people's top three. We might have to have an online poll to find out what people think. But anyway, so one of the most controversial movies, we're going to watch The Phantom Menace, and we're going to be talking over the top of it. So if you want to do this with us, just get Disney Plus or whatever lined up, so where it says a long time, or on your DVR or DVD player, or on your VHS player. I've got it on VHS somewhere, but where it says a long time ago, galaxy far, far away, and we'll all start there, and we're just going to talk over the top of it. But I do have to say it was very timely, because I saw a tweet today that said, hey everybody, I heard that Trump's going to pardon both Jar Jar Binks and the Phantom Menace in one in one fell swoop. And I was like, oh, that's funny. That's political humor for the day. But yeah, so and honestly, guys, I like this movie. This is, I think, my favorite of the three prequels. So
yeah, I would say that people will probably bash it right out of the beginning, just so that everybody can get that out of their system, because a lot of people really, really dislike this movie. But then we'll move into maybe some points in its favor, and people might change some opinions.
yeah, we got some. It's been a while since I watched it, so and we're away from the all the emotions. So, but anyway, all right. Well, we'll on the count of three, everybody hit play. So, 1, 2, 3, play. There we go.
yeah, you're saying that about VHS. You just remind me of the first time when I bought the VHS for this. It was like at Kenner Mall, and it was like the special edition box, which came with like a little reel, like a couple of film stills. It was so unique. I was like, wow, I got the VHS for a Star Wars movie. I want to say it was the first one that I got.
So, right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and read the crawl here. Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates the alarming chain of events, the Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict. You guys notice what's missing from that crawl?
Big bold words,
all caps. Yeah, all caps. That just hit me just right now. But
did we ever get an answer as to why they were blockading Naboo? I mean, I know they're saying they're hoping to create a resolution, but why did they pick Naboo?
Well, I think they probably picked Naboo because they're working with Palpatine.
Sidious. Yeah,
and I mean that's his home planet, so he can manipulate the Queen and whatnot. I mean,
Also, the sympathy vote. Remember, he mentions that later on. I believe the
Mm.
situation will create a sympathy for us.
Right.
so I'll say this just once, but I've said it again on the podcast before. If people who are upset about politics and economics being at the heart of the prequel trilogy, I don't know what else you expected, because that was we knew that's that what's what Palpatine did. So that was the story that was coming. Now I can say this. I will say this if you were the first Star Wars movie we ever saw, A New Hope, it starts off with a big space battle right over your head, and it's just like you throw you in the deep end right off the bat. And here it's a slow come in. It's how are you doing, and you see it's Jedi, and there's a 3PO looking thing, but it's a slow start. So
The first, what is it, the second or third scene of this movie is them sitting around a conference table.
yeah, so I do get that. I do. We've been waiting 15 years. It should have opened up with something blowing up, or Jedi a whomping and a whooping or something. I get that.
But it goes back to. I mean, it kind of goes back to I'm pretty sure you guys remember when the title was finally revealed, the Phantom Menace, and everybody went, "What does that mean? What are you talking about?" And of course, and naturally there was discussion online on the early days of the internet about 50 serials and the Phantom Menace, and kind of the track that Lucas was trying to go into at the time. And it was interesting because he would later admit that he was trying to tell this grand story of democracy falling apart, and and how do you make it fall apart? By pulling out all these threads. And it's not the threads where it's all action scenes and whatnot. It's the stuff that happens around conference tables. But it's understandable that you're right. At its offset, you're hoping that, hey, let's get some lightsabers, some ship battles, and we're gonna get that in a moment. It's just you're waiting for it to happen. Now, one other question there: are we surprised that we get the reveal of Darth Sidious so quickly?
Well, okay, so that was the thing that this is where I start geeking out in the theater, because you have to remember, everybody, that back when this came out, I mean, the internet was a young being, really. I mean, but there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not Darth Sidious was the Emperor. And I'm thinking, well, of course it's the Emperor, because it's being played by the same dude. But people were still, is Sidious the Emperor? Blah, blah. Debate back and forth. And the first thing you hear when Sidious comes on screen is the Emperor's theme from Return of the Jedi. And I was just, as a music, as a professional musician, as a music major, music teacher, I was over the moon with that. But it never comes out and says flat out, this is Senator Palpatine. But again, if you were around, you knew that once you hear the name Palpatine, it's like, oh, that's the dude who's the Emperor. So I mean, that's not the secret part, So
Right. Well,
To I
mhm.
was just gonna say, Fredo, to your point earlier about the Phantom Menace and the title, I remember a lot of people at the time not just like trying to figure out what it meant, but just thinking, what? Like that doesn't sound very Star Warsy to me,
Right.
well,
in my
the
opinion.
deal is that we know what's going on. The Jedi don't know what's going on, so we can see that Palpatine is the Phantom Menace. They don't know he's a bad guy, and he's pulling all these strings to get everything rolling his way. So it makes sense, from that standpoint.
And I have a favorite theory, personal pet theory about that title as well,
Hmm.
which, people originally thought, like, oh, maybe it's a reference to Darth Maul or something. And then eventually, if you've watched the film, you begin to realize it's Palpatine pulling the strings in the shadows. The Phantom Menace is the fake menace, the Trade Federation and the dispute, and that's not an actual threat in the same way that Palpatine is. But my theory is that the Phantom Menace is actually everyone's attachment to their old version of Star Wars, since it prevents them from enjoying the newer stuff. And that's the thread. That is the story of this movie, is that people just rejected it because it wasn't their Star Wars.
You know,
And there's so much here that like throws people, you know.
Right.
All this Trade Federation stuff, there's no stormtroopers. It's, you know, you got these droids wandering around.
see, and
You got
I remember being in the theater just going, I'm watching Star Wars. This is awesome. Look, lightsabers and blasters, and there's a young Obi-Wan. I am all in. You know, I don't remember getting all up and all ticked off because, you know,
I didn't
it even
either.
took me a couple
And my
years to get mad about the you know the accents of the Nemoidians. You know, it's like,
Yeah,
well,
I
well,
mean,
yeah, I mean, like
that's
some of
that's
those
problematic. But at the time, I was just like, okay, it's you know, it's Star Wars Alien, and you know, um, so
but
I,
yeah,
like this is not the same in a lot of ways. And like for that criticism, I'll always hear that criticism. And like even though I remember I had friends who were like angry about the score. The score came out, they went out and they rushed out and they
oh,
bought it, and they were like, "What?" Like Duel of the Fates comes on, and they're
I
thinking like, "This doesn't sound like Star
well,
Wars."
I will say honestly that I did not dislike Duel of the Fates, but I think it sticks out like a sore thumb in the entire Star Wars repertoire. It
And that's
it,
my point. Is
it
so much of this is new and different and a departure and bold
Yeah,
and interesting.
but it seems like, you know, you have this, you know, long Wagnerian opera, and then one scene they get, you know, Strauss to write the music for it. You know, it kind of sounded like it, but it, you know, wasn't. So but I mean, again, I didn't dislike it, but it made me go, okay, that's weird. All right, well, it's cool. You know, doesn't
well,
seem to
it's
fit, but
and
it's
I
cool.
think
Um, now, oh, what was I going to say? Keep.
Fredo, you were going to say something, right?
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, and I think that we have to be cognizant when you're in the theater on May 25th, 1999. None of this exists in the zeitgeist. It's just a movie. Everybody's running to the midnight showings. You want to see it. You want to experience it. Now, some of the stuff had begun leaking out. I remember, yeah, some of the stuff like in the soundtrack, like the titles of the tracks, and the novelization had come out a week or so before the toys had already come out. So you already got, if you wanted to, you could find out everything that was going to happen in this movie on the internet from top fan sites before you ever set foot in the movie. What's interesting though is that at that moment you didn't, the prequels as we come to know them were just an amorphous thing. This was just beginning to kind of unroll itself, and something. So sometimes we look at it now, 20 some, almost 20 some years into the future, and going like, well, obviously this was going to be a bone of contention, and clearly this was a mistake. But also, I do think, maybe in some kind of ways there should have been a bit of slack cut towards Lucas in the regard that making one of these movies is a lot of effort and a lot of choices, and he hadn't done anything like this since Return of the Jedi,
Well,
and that's a lot.
you know, we've talked about it before as well that, um, you know, that a lot of us, you know, and probably me included, you know, a lot of us went into this movie wanting to recapture that feeling of seeing Star Wars for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's you know, the theme of our podcast is managing expectations, right? And so people, you know, flipped out. For example, here we got first time we see Jar Jar, and
Right.
you know, I'll say again, I've won over Scott Colesby on the argument that, you know, people were so mad about Jar Jar, and it's like if you were, let's see, 98 was that when this came out? 99,
99.
99. Okay, so I'm 26 years old at that point. All right. So if I was 26 years old going to see Star Wars in 1977 and I saw C3PO, I'd probably think he was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But, you know, because I was a kid, you know, C3PO was, you know, endearing to me. He was kind of goofy. I got him. I got the humor and stuff like that. So, Jar Jar was not designed for, you know, the 26 and up crowd. And I will also say, Dave, here's another fun little maybe Phantom Menace twist. I think the Phantom Menace are the internet trolls that make you went in and saw Phantom Menace and you thought, hey, this is kind of a fun movie. And then you go on the internet and people are whispering in your ears that no, it's bad. And it's,
that whisper campaign went on for 20 years after the movie. And I think like that colored a lot of opinions. If you remember when the reviews came out for this movie, they were very positive. And like I think it had something like a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't like the best score ever, but solidly positive. And now it's down into like the 50s over the course of 20 years of negative reviews and pushing this narrative. And I get people are allowed to have a negative opinion of the film. But I just feel like also the net nerds kind of pushed a lot of that discourse. And
and I also want to bring a point because now we're going into the water, going down to Gungan City, and the film has slowed down considerably. And I want to remind people that watching A New Hope, the first thing, yes, was we get that big, space battle, and then Darth Vader and his troops storming and the blockade runner, and then we spend a lot of time on Tatooine of droids wandering around and Luke meeting Obi-Wan. It is slow until stormtroopers start shooting up the Millennium Falcon. Right? I mean, so there's a lot of slow stuff there. So I really encourage people to, not to, I don't want you to now start hating A New Hope, but there's a lot of, if you don't like the fact that it's, the pacing is slow, it's like, go back and watch some of the old movies because they're slow as well. I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
No, I was gonna say maybe I was thinking on Jar Jar, the Nemodians, Watto when we get to them. Are we surprised that Lucas didn't think to go with more of the alien dialect with subtitles underneath?
So there was I was watching a documentary clip somewhere. I think it was on Reels, and they were talking about when George and Marcia Lucas got divorced. They said that George Lucas lost his greatest asset because Marcia Lucas would go, she would be the one to say, dude, seriously, these people's, accents, you're really going to go with that? Or really, you're going to make Watto, so there was nobody, I don't think there was anybody around. I think there was probably just this atmosphere of nobody was going to say that's not good.
And I think, and obviously for a movie in 1999, the special effects look great, but you can sort of kind of see, like, we just passed the moment where one of the Gungan guards shocks Jar Jar, and you can see the half-second split between him and him getting shocked and Obi-Wan's reaction.
Well, and all this, I'm sorry, I'll just real quick. All these special effects were really, they were pushing the boundaries on these special effects. So it's gonna, go ahead.
No, that's what I was gonna say. It's like, and that's part of what Star Wars was known for, is pushing the boundaries. But also, this was so new, and the way he was filming was new. Again, I'll go back to the point of Lucas hadn't gone behind the camera, technically speaking, since 1977. That's the last movie he directed completely. I mean, he did some second unit stuff on Empire and I believe in Jedi to help Richard Marquand. But realistically, he hadn't been behind a camera on any serious way, shape, or form since 22 years prior. And, sometimes we do have to acknowledge that while, being on a tour is a beautiful idea for everybody, it's not so easy to get back on that bike, particularly when you're trying to throw in on top of that whole slew of new technologies and systems on top of it. It doesn't work like that.
I think the effects mostly hold up. You know,
Hmm.
like again, like you said, for 1999, they were incredible, um, top of the line stuff, and it was George pushing boundaries again, and that's what Star Wars always traditionally does. Like that's what they're doing now with the volume
Hmm.
in Mandalorian, and they're always developing new technology to make these visions come to life. And I thought they did a great job for the most part. Some of this stuff underwater is hit or miss. You know, like some of these things. The fact that it's a mix between practical and digital, though, at least more so, probably, I think I've read more so than the following two prequels.
Hmm.
I think like this movie probably gets lumped in with those two a little bit more than it should because so much of this actually is practical cities and ships and things that they've built.
And whenever we get to them, we can remark upon this. But I think we got to keep in mind that in so many ways, Episode Two became almost a an apology for Episode One, and Episode Three then became an apology for Episode Two. Episode One's the one that you can almost 100% say this is what he wanted to make. There was no
Mhm.
priors. I mean, everybody's coming with the expectations of the original trilogy, but he wasn't setting out to make the original trilogy. He wanted to make something whole new and different, and this is the clearest, sharpest tone of that. There's always a bigger fish.
Well, we'll get. I know we're going to circle back to this topic a lot more, but I think one of the things that I really find interesting about the prequels is everybody's negative reaction to George killing off all of the new characters.
Yeah, I was
um,
actually just thinking. I wish Liam Neeson would have stayed for at least another movie because I think he makes an awesome Jedi Master, and I think Darth Maul should have been the villain for all three. Quite honestly,
and you could argue that Padme gets weaker amongst the three movies. Like she's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting here as a child leader. The second movie, she holds her own, and then the third movie, they sort of push her off to the sideline. Um, I think like with all three of those characters, I think they're fabulous. And there's even we've talked about Jar Jar. The merit to Jar Jar is the comic relief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the criticism is valid that you killed these people off um, when you talk about the how it was done. Because again, Qui Gon and Darth Maul, we wanted more of, and we got robbed of that. They
Mm-hmm.
all we didn't get more of them after this movie, and then Padme, her ending. You know, we've talked about that before, but like she got done dirty
She
by the
did.
end of this thing. And I think like if George had figured out a way to more gracefully plan each of those exits, I think people would have probably come away feeling more positive about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to
Like,
say that as I was defending Jar Jar a little bit ago, I will say here's a couple things that take me out of it. One, the if the sight lines aren't right, then I'm taken out of the movie when it doesn't look like Obi-Wan is actually looking into Jar Jar's eyes. Then it's obvious, and that does take me out of it. I will say that. The other thing is that, like I said, I did compare. I said if you're 26 years old and you saw C3 for the first time, you'd be beside yourself. But the thing is that C3PO in A New Hope is kind of like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. Every time he's on screen, he's tolerable and it's funny. But then if you were to it's like if you go to Rodney Dangerfield and Back to School and you get a whole movie of him, then you're exhausted by the end of that movie and you don't want to see any more Rodney Dangerfield. You know what I mean? So I think if they would have minimized Jar Jar's shtick a little bit, And
or at
even
least
though
find a
he was a
way.
main character, I get it. They wanted to push that envelope of having a digital main character, but I think they could have backed it off a little bit and probably not got as much of a backlash. Fredo?
Well, no, I was going to say, or at least find a way to show him to be an active participant. I think that's one of the hard parts with because he is supposed to be comic relief. He's supposed to be kind of a bumbling character who lucks his way through the story, and somebody would say there's no such thing as luck. He's strong with the force, whatever. But I think because every instance that we get from him is just either expressing himself so loudly or behaving in such a way that's cartoony and not really contributing towards the fight or whatever. Like okay, yeah, C3PO didn't contribute much of the fight, but either. But at the very least, he wasn't getting in the way. So I think it did. There had to be a way to kind of make him a full-rounded character that could contribute to the proceedings beyond just simply, well, he's coming along and oh, he falls in here. By the way, speaking of the effects that you said don't line up, one of the things that really sticks out right now as we're watching it, the lightsabers going through the droids. Like whenever you see, as they're swinging the lightsabers, you can tell that Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are swinging at something that isn't there.
No, I've never really paid attention. Now I probably will. And thanks for ruining Phantom Menace for me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Any of the saber play though, you see that in Attack of the Clones as well, like in the arena stuff. Is like where they're blocking blaster fire. You
can tell they're just swinging around in an empty ring. However, I will say again, I remember in 1999, I was sitting there going, lightsabers, yeah, and they're force pushing, yeah, and I was just like over the moon to see all this stuff, because really before that all we saw was Luke move rocks and grab his lightsaber and force choke a Gamorrean guard or two. Otherwise really we never saw these force powers really at work all the time. So I was like over the moon with this.
But by the way, we should mention right quick, we get both Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman in this scene.
Yeah. Okay. So was anybody supposed to be confused by this? I mean, there are people who are honestly like, and by the way, fun fact, apparently it was not too long ago, Keira Knightley apparently forgot that she was in episode 1.
Which I'm like, how do you forget that?
Well, she was what, 13, 14 at the time or something like that?
True, but still, like this wasn't just a walk on by role, but she's in full costume. But that took a few days.
As viewers, were we supposed to be confused by
the fact that she's using a decoy?
Yeah, I mean, but that were we? Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I think there were some people who were.
I think it's supposed to be. I mean, it's not supposed to be so obvious, but at the same time, if you notice the moment she turns towards the handmaidens and one of them says we're brave, and you're like, dude, come on.
I think, by the way, watching this, I think the lightsabers going through droids works. Sorry.
I don't know. They swing. They're swinging way too much for my liking. Maybe that's just me.
And we get the introduction to R2-D2.
Yep.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I mean,
it worked better for me than C3PO. C3PO being built by Darth Vader was a bit much for a lot of people, and I understood that. But R2-D2 just being, part of the crew on this particular ship, and that's how he falls in with these people. I liked that, and he saves the day too, as he is wont to do.
Yeah, I think if I was to go back and write it, you could have made, you could have made C3PO like Bail Organa's protocol droid or something, or or heck, could have just been another, droid on Naboo, who knows?
Right.
Right. I mean, particularly in his role as a protocol droid, you figure, okay, we're talking senators and royalty and all the other stuff. Clearly, the easy path here is making the droid to one of them.
But then of course, somebody in a meeting room somewhere went, oh yeah, and then because C3PO always said thank the maker, That would be funny now that, you know.
That might have been, yeah. But I like the. I guess I understand the logic of it, which a lot of it with Lucas comes down to that. Do I agree with the logic? Like he was. I want to be able to show the meeting of these two characters on screen,
Well, you
and
also
I
want to show
also
the
and I,
aptitude of Anakin, right? We're not, I mean,
right.
we're not there yet, but um,
The other thing is with the C-3PO thing is like you have that comic relief in Jar Jar.
Mhm.
You created Jar Jar for that purpose, so now you don't need C-3PO. So um, totally get
you know,
why he's on the sidelines.
the other thing I can see here, because we got Sidious now at a meeting at a you know, meet a meeting room with the Nemoidians, and we're going to see Darth Maul for the first time here. You know, I can also understand in A New Hope, right off the bat, it is clear as a bell that Darth Vader is the bad guy, and he's going to destroy anything to get what he needs, right? And they take a while to build up the bad guys here.
Mhm.
We know they're antagonists, but we don't know that they're, you know, evil. We don't know that we're fighting evil, really.
Or formidable.
Well,
Right.
and part of it is everything about the Phantom Menace merchandising and promotional material was so Darth Maul centric. I mean, I remember when the toys came
Yeah,
out
the
that
packaging, Darth Maul. Yeah.
the packaging for every action figure had Darth Maul's face on it. It
Yeah.
didn't have 3POs, it didn't have R2, didn't have Obi-Wan, didn't have Jar Jar. It was Darth Maul. It was his face staring at you. The novelization, Darth Maul was on the cover. So it's always interesting that they put him so front and center to see how little of him is actually in the movie. And I know he becomes a much bigger, richer, more rounded character thanks to Clone Wars and Rebels. But if it's just weighing him here, he's very much a secondary character in this movie.
You know, speaking of merchandising,
Hmm.
this movie is the most commercial of the bunch. I mean, brazenly so. It was clearly marketed towards kids in a very aggressive way.
Well, it
I
was the
remember
first
the
time that they had the, you know, Force Friday, you know, launching, really when people would line up at Toys R Us at midnight so they could go buy all the new toys. Yeah.
yeah,
Did that?
yeah, and there were you know, a bazillion fast food tie-ins and um, everything. There were like ice cream bars. That was one that stuck out in my mind for some reason. It's like you go to the ice cream aisle and there are ice cream bars. And
May I
uh,
remind you that the Force Awakens had BB-8 oranges.
well, yeah, but again, like to this degree, back at that time, that was like they went all out, right?
I don't know
Yeah,
how many Star Wars Burger King glasses do you have from 1980 or 1983? I still have a
Like
I,
couple.
yeah, I
that's
wish I had them.
impressive. That's impressive if you still have those. But you know, like here's what I would say in his defense is like there's a couple of things. One, he needed to finance the rest of his movies, right?
Mhm.
And you know they're an independent studio, they're not swimming in cash in the same way some other people were, so they're like, yeah, I need to finance all of this. I need to make as much money now as I can, first of all. But so that's the, you know, the business side of it. Secondly, um it served a storytelling purpose, and we're about to see here why, in the form of Anakin, and it's the ultimate corruption. It's like you're going to corrupt a little good-hearted kid,
Mhm.
and it was that decision that he made, that we're going to introduce Anakin at such a young age and wholly good, and then we're going to corrupt him and show how he can go down that path. Um, it's a very interesting storytelling decision, and it kind of lines up with this aesthetic for this movie, which is again is like marketed to kids. You know how much so? We have a kid in the movie.
All right, real
And how
quick.
much so?
I'm sorry. I did not need Jar Jar stepping in dog crap.
I was about to say, talking about appealing to kids.
However, let's do a little. Let's play a little what if. You know, as much as I love Liam Neeson and I love the character of Qui-Gon Jinn, why didn't they just have Obi-Wan
Oh,
going down on to Tatooine and finding Anakin, and wouldn't that have made a bit more
well, that was the original plan. The
drawn a
original script was Obi-Wan. There was no Qui-Gon. It was Obi-Wan as the Jedi ambassador going to helping them crash. And it's not till later on. I think it's not till it gets to the duel part that Lucas realized that he needed somebody to die in there to kind of raise the stakes, and then he kind of splits the old or the Jedi Knight role from Obi Wan and makes them the apprentice.
I also
But yeah,
don't know
originally it was one
I also don't know what people expected from
from Jake Lloyd.
from a child Darth Vader. And and also, if you want to skip forward to Attack of the Clones, from a teenage Darth Vader, he was going to be obviously, yeah, he was going to be sweet, but you had to have this dark side to them where they get angered easily, and they you know I really liked Jake Lloyd in this part. If you're going to have
It,
Darth Vader as a little kid, I think this makes sense.
it does the job, and I think that's kind of a difficulty because we're trying to attach all our feelings and all our expectations on the character as a whole, on what he's watching, on what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, he's like you're saying, he's a kid right now. He's not gonna. No, right now he doesn't know anything about the Force. He has never swung a lightsaber. He doesn't know that he's meeting his future wife. Which, if everybody had been told way back when, hey, look, kids, right there and there, that's Luke and Leia's mom and dad meeting for the first time. That's their meet cute. I don't think as many people would have been like, "Yeah, I don't know about all that. That sounds kind of weird."
Oh, we're missing all of Watto's great offensive
Introduction.
lines.
Republic credits.
I still love the design of that
Mm.
character so much. He looks like a hot air balloon just sort of floating there, and it looks like his stomach is filled with helium.
Well, and I like how they've even got a fan going on Liam Neeson's hairs because the flapping wings are,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah, that's a nice detail.
No,
there's there's so many things in any movie, really. The attention to detail. Somebody's got to be saying, I was actually, when the battle droids were walking by, and like, just they had to animate the shadows. You know what I mean? It's like it's just, I don't know, man. It would be mind numbing working on a.
yeah, it's. I mean, that's just it. It's because you have to make it look and feel like it's part of the world. Like Jar Jar right now, he's walking in sunlight. And by the way, it never gets explained how a character from a very wet, swampy world can manage to be in arguably the most arid, dry place in the universe and not be literally wilting away. But anyway, uh, yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of. I mean, all of this is a lot of effort. Every flap of those wings had to be animated, and you had to animate the shadows behind it. You had to think about all that. But yeah, it's a lot of effort, and again, it's all brand new technology, and I think that's really the big point that cannot be forgotten when we assess both the quality and the shortcomings of this movie. Is that you look at it and go, they're pushing the envelope, and sometimes you can't make episode 3 without this one. You can't make Rogue One without this one. You can't make The Force Awakens or Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker without this one. You this is step one in order to get to all those other movies.
Yeah, I will say also, okay, there are some things that take me. We have this scene now where Jar Jar gets in a little scrape with Sebulba,
Sebulba.
and
Mm-hmm.
it just seems to, like, I don't know, it almost seemed like, hey, let's try to make another digital character, and and let's see what we can do. I don't know. It seems like they were just kind of adding some stuff that they could have. I mean, this scene could have easily been cut, you know, and
Well,
moved
but they
straight
needed
into
to
it.
introduce Sebulba.
Do you
He's the
really? I
nemesis.
mean, you would have figured out that he was the big bad racer dude in the race because he got the biggest, you know, biggest pod racer and he's chucking things at people. I mean, I'm just saying it. These are
Yeah,
things that I can see
but it's
where people are
also
like taken out of a rhythm in the movie.
true. But it's two points that this scene is serving. Episode number, part one, introducing Sebulba. Part two, it's connecting Anakin with this group right here, and
Yeah.
you know, funny. Sebulba ends up eating the chicken. But yeah, no, it's trying to do multiple things. But you're right. It's after we've had now. I mean, how long are we in the movie now? 40 minutes, 30 minutes.
We are
Of
37 minutes in.
characters walking from point A to point B to try to find something or connect with somebody. Now we're gonna get another 3-4 minutes of characters walking from point A to point B to
But
go sit
again,
around the table.
yeah, I mean, but like again, let's take it back to A New Hope, where it was like our goal was pretty much set up right away.
Mm-hmm.
We knew what we need. It was obvious where we were going. I think here it's like this movie is a slow build as to what the overall goal that we're going to have to get to is. So I can I'm just empathizing a little bit, or maybe sympathizing with people who were frustrated by this movie. That it's because it's a you gotta be patient. It's kind of like right now with me and WandaVision.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like 2 episodes in, I'm just like they give me enough to keep me intrigued, and I'm going to keep watching it, but I'm just like not totally enjoying it just yet. I'm sure I
Mm-hmm.
will, but it's like I don't know. It's just weird.
A lot of the acting and things are subjective, and a lot of the critiques of this film are subjective. But like that's one of the biggest giant flashing problems that people have with this movie. It's just the pace. It's off kilter. It's not quite what you would expect from a blockbuster film. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of the reason for that is because Lucas wasn't beholden to any studio when he did this. Again, I think you said earlier, like this is his movie. Like before the critique, and all the complaints started flying in, and he started course correcting, with Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith to mixed results. He was making the movie he wanted to make.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm sorry. The thing that puts me off kilter, I'm just as you're talking, I was thinking about this, is that if you talk about in most movies, the conflicts that you have throughout the movie are generally with the same antagonist or group of antagonists, but the conflicts that we've had so far are with Fish, with a little bit with the battle droids and the Nemoidians. Pretty soon we're going to have a conflict with Sebulba. So it's like I don't know. It doesn't seem to be focused, and it kind of gets to your point, like you said about the pacing. If it's unclear as to who I'm supposed to be, frightened of and battling, I suppose. Now let's talk about Darth Maul for a second, if we can. What'd you guys
Mm-hmm.
think of the design when you first saw Darth Maul?
Awesome. But
I mean, when the second I saw him, like in promotional material, I thought, like, well, that's a guy with his face painted. I was underwhelmed, but seeing him come to life on film was incredible. I loved it.
I was the opposite. I loved them from the get go because it was such a different take on a villain. We were accustomed, okay, like the original trilogy gave us Darth Vader with the mask, which is all he was monochromatic. He was one color, all black, and he's shown because of the materials that they use for his mask and his armor and whatever. So to get a cat to go from a character that had no expression to one that was very expressive. I mean, bright orange, yellow eyes, bright red paint, snarling at you. I'm like, okay, it's a 180 from what we got before, but I'm ready for that. I'm ready for something different.
Circling back, Aaron. Well, actually, Aaron, before we circle back. What did you think?
Yeah.
Again, it was a total different look from anything like what Fredo was saying. It's totally different than anything we saw in any Star Wars. Um, it to me, it's obviously, and it's also, it seemed to mirror Darth Vader a little bit. When you see Darth Vader for the first time on screen, that's the bad guy. Okay, we see Darth Sidious with a hood on. I mean, a hood doesn't make you bad. But when you see Darth Maul, just with, his, face paint or, tattoos or whatever, it's like society tells us that's the bad guy, right? For right or for, wrong. But I dug the design. So yeah.
Would you? Here's another question for everybody. What were your initial reactions to the film at large?
I want to say when I came out of the theater, I was happy with it because I also understood. I mean, this is something that in some ways I kind of accepted as I was watching the slow pace of this movie, was that this was chapter one. So in some ways it's different. It was different movie making from what the original trilogy had done. The original trilogy is very much episode 4 self-contained. You watch nothing else, you're good. It's not till episodes 5 and 6 that you get into the chapter episodic storytelling. This one, I knew from the offset, okay, we are introducing these characters. We're going to get more stories out of them. So I was okay with it. In repeat viewings, yeah, the flaws begin to stick out because that's what flaws do. Particularly if you go to a movie, to a movie screening at midnight, you want to be wowed, you want to be dazzled, you don't want to come out disappointed.
I don't think I've ever come out of a Star Wars movie where I was feeling let down. I mean, I'm a homer. It's just I've never been that way. I mean,
Are you evil Homer?
The last Jedi maybe was. I don't even think that was one, but of course I'll leave that one off to the side because I had pain meds going into my neck through the entire thing. So even Rise of Skywalker, I left going, that was cool. I dug it. I had a good time. It was Star Wars. It looked like Star Wars. It's when you start going home and thinking about everything and like I said, reading about everything that you get all fired up about this, that, or the other. Like I said, I enjoyed it. That was my first reactions that I got to see Star Wars after 15 years. It was awesome.
So now we get to the point where Qui-Gon begins to gamble heavily, like a drunk dad in Vegas.
Yeah. Hey, he knows he's going to win.
By the way, if I can say another thing about Jar Jar, and again, after I defend Jar Jar, now I'm noticing things that I can see why people were kind of bothered. And I'm going to use the Rodney Dangerfield, and Caddyshack reference again. Jar Jar moves a lot when he's in a scene. He just is constantly moving. And I understand you have this digital character, so you can't just make him look like set dressing. You got to convince people that he's alive, but he moves around like Rodney Dangerfield, tugging at his tie and, shifting in his shoes and just, so I can understand where it's like, dude, just sit still. Everybody else is sitting around the table. If we go back to the, dinner at Shmi's house, it's like everybody else is just sitting and, moving their head normally. And Jar Jar's like just all over the place. So I can understand how some people were like taken aback by this.
That was how Ahmad Best was directed to play it too.
Oh, yeah,
no, and that's why he was cast. It's like you're a very physical actor. In the tradition of like silent film actors.
But again, do you think anybody around George Lucas said, "Dude, he's really distracting in the scene"?
No, nobody did. Like what we talk about, Rick McCallum, right? It was the executive producer.
He thinks everything's effing awesome.
Yeah, he was a yes man. And like again, I have got nothing against him. He's probably a lovely person. But he was a yes man. And like when George was working at 20th Century Fox, there were people that he had to answer to. And that would kind of rein him in a little bit. You talked about Marcia, but there were other people. Alan Ladd, Gary Kurtz. I'm spacing on our boy who wrote Solo.
Lawrence Kasdan.
While you're paused,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Larry Kasdan. Yeah, there were people. There were other creative forces that kept him in check.
So how do you guys feel about? I mean, because right now it's Qui-Gon and Shmi talking about the virgin birth of Anakin Skywalker, which I mean that storyline, that trope, if you will, makes sense. I mean, it's it's an archetype that is in all
Legend, yeah.
So I didn't have any problem with that. But what do you think about recent comic books like trying to plant the seed that Palpatine planted the seed, if you will, and manipulated the midichlorians to create Anakin Skywalker?
But isn't that back from Episode 3 when Palpatine is at the Opera House telling Anakin about using the midichlorians, the Darth Plagueis the Wise tale.
Yeah, but this comic book
isn't he basically kind of suggesting that that's what happened?
No, this comic book came out and like depicted, showed Shmi's belly and Palpatine working over a cauldron type thing.
Okay. I was about to say we didn't need to see Sheev and Shmi getting it on. Okay, that did not need to be depicted.
Sheev and Shmi, that's a tongue twister.
Yes, it was.
And by the way, I also want to link people together that basically Grogu and Anakin are the same age.
Yeah.
So baby Yoda.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. Was it a different chosen one that?
Always two there are. Yeah.
Well, but and it's an interesting point because given the discussion that Shmi just had with Qui-Gon regarding the nature of Anakin's birth, his strength in the Force, his nature, all that stuff, he is coming closer and closer to believing he is the chosen one. So, which is what leads to him bringing him along, leads to him defying the council, so to speak, in his way. So it creates a dynamic, an interesting dynamic where you're like, well, wait a second, what if he was wrong the whole time? What if it was Grogu who was the chosen one who's going to bring balance to the Force? Of course it isn't, because Lucas clearly made it so known that it would be Anakin, but still.
Well, Maul later on thinks it's Luke.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people think that it was ultimately Rey, because she was the one who ultimately knocked Palpatine out of existence. So, it's...
Well, even in Rebels, though, when, Maul says, is he the chosen one? And even they have Obi-Wan confirm he is.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I guess they never come out and say that, hey, we're both talking about this kid you're looking after. I mean, it could be that they're both talking about Anakin Skywalker.
No, but I also think that's the nature of two guys who lost everything and are hinging their last shred of hope on the kid that's down the hall or down the desert. So clearly by that point they were like, no, it can't have been Anakin. Definitely not for Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan saying you were supposed to be the chosen one, but given everything that happened, it can't be you. So prophecy, we got the prophecy wrong, but now we're going to get it right, which it would have been interesting if Lucas had kind of, and I get Rian Johnson did touch on some of that in Last Jedi, the idea of, okay, you start thinking you're fulfilling prophecy, be careful. You might get it wrong 100%. And here we go, midichlorians.
Okay, well, this is where the concept really gets introduced, and then he explains it in further detail later on.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have been okay with it just being introduced as some sort of thing that they never explain?
I would have been okay. I would have been better with that. I was not I was not ticked off the way they explained midichlorians. But I think I would have been. Well,
I didn't
it's.
need.
I think I would have been better if it just would have been something that you see it and you can't believe it type of a deal. Instead of being explained away. You know, yeah.
I put it this way: I never needed a scientific explanation for the Force, for
Right.
people's connection to the Force. I always understood, even as a kid, that the Force was yes, it was a power, but it's also a system of belief. It's in many ways, it's faith.
Well,
It's
now,
you believing in something you can't see or feel or touch.
well, now
But
here's the deal. Is I was actually just reading an article where they're um, scientists thinking they're figuring out how um, what the scientific phenomena is that causes people to quote unquote hear voices. The clairvoyance that you have down in the French Quarter. And the tarot readers and everything, how they hear spirits, and they're using
mm,
science to explain this. And it's kind of like the Dumbledore quote said, "Well, of course it's in your head, but why isn't that not true?"
mhm.
So why can't it be? Why can't it be both? That yeah, science can explain some of these mystical things, but you know, they're still incredible.
Well, but
Now,
that's what I
however,
mean.
it did seem a little weird where it's like microorganisms. All
Well, and
right,
I guess that's kind of my point. Is did we need it? Was it necessary? You know, in a movie that's trying to set up so much,
I
did
thought
we?
Obi-Wan's explanation in A New Hope was perfect. It's an
Right.
energy force that surrounds all living things. It binds the universe together. You know, I thought that was the best
I,
explanation you could give.
and in
That
a way, go ahead, Doug.
that explanation that Obi-Wan gives in that movie is why, to me, a new part of the reason A New Hope is the better introduction
I would
to
agree.
the movies. It's like that. You have that, or you have midi-chlorians. And I'm not like this big midi-chlorian hater person,
Hmm.
but it's like I'm sorry, that's an easier, more elegant explanation for why these people can like flip around and use laser swords and all that stuff.
And I guess part of the, I get why he needed to put it in some ways. He wanted a quantifiable way of justifying why it is that, hey, Anakin has such a strong connection with the Force. How well, I can tell you he has a strong connection with the Force, but he needs to justify it in order to take this child away from his mother, bring him to the Jedi Temple, and champion him being trained under the idea that he is the most wizard of wizards, to steal a line that's just flashing across my screen
Yeah, I
right
mean,
now.
abducting kids in general.
Yeah, people frown upon that. I've heard that's not really liked.
It's
He
good.
had Shmi's permission.
Well, it's good to have a little bit of scientific justification, maybe, in order to
Mhm.
make that call. That's as good a reason as any for that to exist. But what it calls to mind for me is like that's a part of the lore now.
Yeah,
That's how impactful these movies were. And I think we kind of lose sight of that. You always think about, our generation, we think back to the original trilogy. None of it would exist without the OT. Um, but this was such a powerful, impactful reinvention of Star Wars. You think about all these elements now and how omnipresent they are. All of this stuff set up the Clone Wars, which influenced Rebels and the Disney era in general. You were talking about M count in the Mandalorian. Now we're talking about Sidious's name being dropped in the Last Jedi. Like those kinds of things are there. The score changes. Um, the design choices that now are a part of this universe. It's not all old and lived in and broken down. There's some new mixed in there with it.
yeah, and I think that's part of what um, Lucas was setting up to do with this movie. It's go back and take a look at the original trilogy movies. For as expansive and imaginative as they were, they're giving us a slice of the galaxy. He is looking, we're either on Tatooine, or we're on Yavin, or we're on the Death Star, or we're in Hoth, or Dagobah, or Cloud City. And it's like each movie gave us at most three locations. That's it. This is a movie that's zipping around places. Actually, this one actually also gives us three locations, but it's expanding itself. It's showing us that there's a society. It's showing us that there's these vast cultures and different aliens and different technology and all this other stuff because he's looking to expand the universe that it all takes place in. And it's something that all the following projects from Clone Wars through the High Republic now, they're all looking to do that, to expand.
See,
They don't want to just give you a tiny slice. They want to give you as much of it as they can, as you want.
sorry to take the conversation down, but we just passed, another
Another poop
another
joke.
another poop joke, where the Eopie farts in Jar Jar's face. These are the things that make me go, I get that little kids laugh at fart jokes, but I think we've had one too many maybe by now.
Is this the movie with the most poop jokes in a Star Wars movie?
I think it's the only movie with poop jokes. Um,
I don't remember any other ones in any other movie.
but
Not even the sequels.
who was in the? I want to know who was in the meeting room. It's like what the scene needs. Have that animal fart in Jar Jar's face. It'd be awesome.
Well, and what it is, it's
Or
well, how
George
come
was
Sebulba
drunk
got
and
to,
somebody just cut it in, and George was drunk and saw it, and he was like, "Yeah, leave that in. That's awesome." Ha ha ha.
no, what it is, it's they need Jar Jar to step away from the pod in order for Sebulba to get in there and damage it. Okay, how do we get Jar Jar out the way? Well, he's the comic relief. Poop joke.
So what do you think?
Hey, Bib Fortuna sighting.
Yeah, well, and it's the same dude who
Back
plays
when he
Bib
was svelte,
Fortuna.
was
Yeah,
skinny,
it's the same dude.
skinny Bib.
Did we need Jabba the Hutt?
Well, they said that the planet's run by the Hutts.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that they're bringing him in here, even if it's just tiny cameo to connect, to connect him to the original trilogy. I love that idea. They're saying that even though, I mean, this is the time of the Republic, Jedi Knights, Guardians of Peace and Justice, and all that other stuff. They're quick to say, no, that's a planet controlled by the Hutts.
And by the way,
we,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fredo. Finish the thought.
no, say, no, just got finished. Like we got planets controlled by gangsters in our galaxy.
So my question here, because we just had an interaction between Qui-Gon and Padme.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he knows from the get-go that that's the Queen? I actually think it is, and he's just he's like yanking her chain the whole time. It's like she's like, I don't think we should do this. She's like, Queen would let me do it. Nah,
Mm-hmm.
I think he knows, and he's just I don't know, Dave.
Well,
What do you think? Do you think Qui-Gon knows?
Yeah, I think so. Until the very end of the movie, when she reveals herself, he makes kind of a weird face. I think Liam just played that scene wrong. Well, because I'm like, wait, is he confused? What's going on here? But yeah, I'm pretty sure he knew or was supposed to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way he acts, because the reality is he knows what he wants to do, and he knows what he needs to do, and this is why he didn't want her come along. But he finally just went, okay, the heck with this. We need to get going. Let's come along and hey, and there's Warwick Davis sitting next to Watto,
playing the same character that he plays in Rogue One. Not Rogue One. Solo. Sorry, Solo.
Mm-hmm.
Solo, yeah, fun little nugget. So I will circle back briefly. I mentioned that I was going to. So this sequence, it's great, right? It's great action. Yeah, it's actiony, it's fun, it's exciting,
it's fast. Yeah,
and it plays into those whole racing motifs that George is just like a huge fan of. Necessary to the movie, I mean, like within the plot that's been established, yeah, but it just kind of feels like an action scene for its own sake in a lot of the ways that Aaron, you were alluding to earlier, which is that these antagonists are all just like kind of a string of antagonists that aren't like the main antagonist.
Right, like this is a nice side trip or a side quest if you think about it in those terms.
Well, and again,
this isn't the main story. You're just helping somebody along on your mission, instead of trying to complete the storyline.
If you,
Uh,
Dave, you're right. If you look at it through the eyes of through the lenses of the story, yeah, it seems kind of off kilter. It seems a little weird. But if you go from the utilitarian side of ILM and Lucasfilm, figuring out how to do these things, can we make digital backgrounds, can we make it make it look like it's actual sand being kicked up, can we make this look realistic? I mean, this is kind of like their class project almost.
mhm. But and also, and kind of going back to something we said earlier, we've said how much of this movie has happened around tables and talking and not much action. This is a big action sequence. This is okay. You wanted to see stuff go fast and stuff blow up and tension and action. We're giving it to you right here for the next 12, 15 minutes, how long it takes. You're gonna be entertained by the action here, and I gotta say, given the slow pace of the movie so far, that's smart because it's creating conflict and it's creating tension, but it's not necessarily doing it with putting our heroes, or in this case our protagonist, Padme, Qui-Gon, in direct threat. They're sitting up there watching the race. They're not the ones whose lives are on the line, but everybody's latched onto what's happening on the screen because stuff's going fast and stuff's blowing up, and that's cool.
By the way,
I
I got Star Wars Racer for the Switch, just so you know.
And are you getting vibes off of this here now?
You're getting Jonesy. Are you jonesing for a quick round or two watching this?
Yeah, no, you know what? Actually, I'm looking at it going, yeah, the graphics on the game are a lot worse than this. So, I remember, I remember, I remember when the game first came out, thinking that the graphics were incredible, and now looking at the game, it's like, yeah, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's not, again 1999. Well, it was N64 too, so it wasn't even on a PlayStation. It was just N64, so it's very blocky. One thing that I'm sort of looking at it now, I'm like, because this is supposed to be very much in the Ben-Hur chariot race,
Yeah.
uh, and Sebulba throws something that destroys somebody else's engines. I'm surprised we don't see more weapons and more flamethrowers and more stuff. Like I want to say in the novelization, there was a character or two who actually tried to attack Anakin with weapons like spears or whatnot. You know.
You know, your point's taken, but I also really appreciate so much of what is here.
Mm-hmm.
Like this sequence where his pod sort of comes apart. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know which version you guys are watching. I think
Right.
like this is the version. Um,
Well,
this
it's
magnet basically that allows him to reattach this part, and then later on when he has an engine failing, he's able to transfer some fuel from one engine to the other, I believe is what's going on, but you can kind
Right.
of piece that together
well,
visually.
and again, it's all about the aptitude of Anakin Skywalker. We're
Right.
we're we're, we're establishing that this kid is a lot more special than other kids around him, like Kitster or Wald.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going, Dave. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but like this is all put together so intelligently visually that you really understand everything that's going on, even if you don't understand the particulars.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's like I can tell that this engine there needs fuel because this engine's not firing in the way that the other one is. Things like that you get to see, and again, I'm going to show you instead of tell you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that George is just basically a genius at. And one other part of this that I wanted to mention too, like here, the final lap, I know that they get to a point where the music kicks in. It had
Mm-hmm.
been all sound before that. And they were talking about how there's always this sort of push and pull between John Williams and Ben Burt.
Yeah.
It's like, when do you let the score take over versus when do you let just like the ambient sound and the sound effects do the talking? And in this sequence, they sort of compromised. They let the actual sound of the racers drive the action until the very end. And at the very end, when the tension's the highest, that's when Williams
those
comes in.
and they use the sound of like the engines. They've talked about in some of the documentaries. You can hear the Sebulba's engines getting louder and louder and louder. You can feel it creeping up on you. But to your point, Dave, about bringing in the score, it's kind of like in Irish music, and when you got a group playing an instrumental set, like you have fiddle, banjo, flute playing a tune, and you have guitar and maybe sometimes piano comping behind. Sometimes when you drop out those comping instruments and it's just the melody for a long time and you just are focusing on them, and then when the guitar and the piano and the drum comes back in, it just elevates the whole experience. And that's what happens here by dropping out the score and you're just relying on just what's going on, just the melody. When that score comes in, then it becomes a much bigger event, and it adds to, like you said, to the tension. So
this is a masterful film.
Dave's frozen. Get the
we can like it's necessary, but yeah.
And there you go. There's a scene where he fixes his engine after it catches fire, transfers fuel, and again he's doing this all on the fly while twisting and turning through the canyons. Again, adding tension to the moment.
It's easily one of my favorite sequences in the movie. I would watch this movie just for that sequence.
What about the announcers? Do you need the announcers in the sequence though?
Well, it's not.
I don't mind them. I don't mind him. I mean, again, he's trying to give you all, a spectacle, so to speak, trying to make it all, in some ways, kind of like NASCAR also.
Well, here's the thing though, is that this, of course, whose line is it anyway? Was a big
a big
Greg show.
Root.
Yeah, it was a big show at this time, and when Phantom Menace came out, then all I could hear, it was just Greg Proops. He didn't he didn't mask anything, didn't try to act his way. It just was Greg Proops reading the stuff, and it just. And I think, George has always said that Star Wars is for kids, and I agree with that. But this movie, this movie in particular, and even though I really like it, they're making so many decisions that are geared towards kids. You know what I mean? Instead of making a movie that kids enjoy, it's like, we'll put in a poop joke, we'll put in a fart joke, and we'll make, Greg Poop sound like this, and you go, oh, there goes Skywalker, yeehaw! It's like, it seems like they're making a cartoon. You know what I mean?
But to Dave's point, this is the only pod race we ever got in one of these movies. It's interesting. We've had plenty of air-to-air combat. We've had plenty of other chases and whatnot, but this is the only one that we ever got, and I think that makes it unique.
Jabba fell asleep. Love it.
Yeah, well, hey, this was race number 27 of his day. You can't be bothered to be doing everything.
Well, yeah, to Freda's point, like, this is very much, he was trying to do different things here. And this is part of it. He's a big fan of race cars.
Yeah,
that's well established. So, I want to put a race scene in my movie and make it matter, and so I'm going to write my story around that. And
there's got to be a reason. There's got to be some story element that gets Anakin off of Tatooine,
right?
And so it's there has to be. So yeah, I think they figured out how to shoehorn that in. Yeah.
By the way, going back to that. Did we need this to happen on Tatooine? Did Anakin Skywalker need to be on Tatooine?
Well, because we got Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Well, Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru could have, parted ways a long time ago and ended up on Tatooine. So it's always weird that it's like, hey,
it makes it a hell of a lot easier to explain all that stuff.
True. I guess what I'm saying is like it's surprising that we keep going back to the desert planet. That's like furthest away
okay,
from...
to that point, I've heard a lot of people say that, especially like when, whenever there's a new Star Wars movie and it has sand on it, they're like, "Oh, we're going back to Tatooine." But however, I will say this: there's something about places on this planet. It's like you
Mm-hmm.
look at Vienna. There's something about Vienna that was in the water or something where why do you have Mozart and Beethoven? You got these big names of the classical era that Vienna was the hotspot. New Orleans. What is
Mm-hmm.
special about New Orleans that it, brings about Jelly Roll Morton and, Louis Armstrong and
Buddy
Kid
Bolden, right?
Ory and Buddy Bolden. What is it about? Why didn't that happen in Jackson, Mississippi, just up the road? You know what I mean? So I think okay, science explains away things, but I think in this case, and in the case of New Orleans and Vienna, I think there are just some cosmic elements that just are that things are drawn to, and Tatooine is the center of the Star Wars universe. In storytelling, really, it was for these movies.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with it going back. First of all, it just makes it easier to explain Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. But I also like the idea of, like I said, there is something about Tatooine that we're always going back there. There's something about it in a cosmic sense, in a big, more umbrella sense.
It's the sand, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets everywhere.
So, this whole sequence, I guess some of it is more successful than the rest of it, with Anakin leaving, I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my favorite lines of dialogue in the movie are coming up, which are, I don't want things to change, but you can't stop the change any more than you can stop the suns from setting.
And how big is that for his arc?
It's absolutely huge for his arc. Um, but it also ties back in with what I was talking about, which is the point of this movie in the first place, which is like this movie is all about change. Um, a group of people who saw Star Wars when they were kids and then grew up and decided I want more Star Wars, and they went to Phantom Menace when it came out in the theaters and watched this movie and soundly rejected it. I always think about that particular piece of dialogue because it's almost as if Lucas is trying to calm down his audience who has grown up at this point, who only wanted what they'd previously experienced. I mean, I like to say that Rogue One was the movie that they wanted in place of this one. They eventually got that, but this movie came out the same year as The Matrix. Um, you think about the 90s era in general where everything had to be cool. Um, you think about the Matrix compared to this movie, a harsh comparison. This is Lucas's flights of fancy, colorful, fanciful, aimed at kids. It's just way less cool. And it's different. And it's like, well, this isn't my Star Wars. This isn't my Star Wars. But things change.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the audience had changed. Like Lucas changed. He put a bunch of stuff into this movie that nobody had seen before. Um, but the audience changed as well. And I think like there needs to be an acknowledgement of that from the fans who come into this thing and just think, well, this was just terrible. I was like, well, no, you grew up.
Yeah,
You
By the,
changed.
by the way, real quick to what's going on the screens, not to take away to what you're saying. Anakin saying goodbye to his mother. Hat tip to Dave Filoni and John Favreau for what they did in that last episode of The Mandalorian, basically mirroring this scene. You have the Jedi to the left. You have Grogu or Anakin in the middle, and you have the parent on the right. And I mean, it is like almost identical, that whole saying goodbye scene. I just think that was
Mm-hmm.
so cool for the Mandalorian to do that. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. No, I like the rhyming of that as well. I love it when they reference this era, especially Filoni, because obviously he is like, George's protege basically. But I'd made my point. I think it just, this is that line of dialogue fits so perfectly.
It's the thesis, the central theme of not just this movie, but in many ways the prequels, the desire to keep things as they are, and how in some ways pursuing such a goal is destructive, self-destructive definitely, but can be destructive in a greater sense, because trying to avoid change, trying to avoid bad things from happening, trying to avoid uh, things from moving in new directions is ultimately what brings down Anakin. He doesn't want to lose those he loves, and thinks he can gain some sort of way enough power to prevent that from happening. And the reality is that's impossible. And but in his trying, he does so much damage to himself and the people he loves. The sad part is at the end of it all is he ends up losing everything by his own actions. He doesn't lose them because Palpatine is evil or the Clone Wars are now the Republic gets overthrown by the Empire. No, he loses everything because he cannot accept or admit to uh, his inability to let go, like Yoda was telling him. And some people would say, well, wait a minute, you're supposed to be, a normal person doesn't want to let their loved ones go, and you're right. But at the same time, you understand that there's no way to prevent that. That that's the course of life, the natural course of life. Um, it's just it's interesting because I mean they're telling you right there. Lucas is putting that right in there in the middle, and how important it comes back for the next movie in terms of what Anakin chooses to do for Shmi and then later on for Padme. Um, I will say, I mean, and sometimes I think you know, is the Phantom Menace flawed as a movie? Yes, there are flaws. Few things 100% perfect, but I think and this is kind of what I've always said about the prequels. You can see what he was planning on doing. You can see what his messages were. He does not hide anything. You know, if some way, that's what makes it so Shakespearean. It's a tragedy. It's gonna, you're seeing good people make dumb choices because they don't want stuff to happen, and it ends up going horribly wrong. Uh, like right now on the screen, there's Padme is comforting Anakin, who, it's for the first time, little kid out on his own, and he's giving her the little juniper necklace, or Japor snippet.
Yeah,
I'm
the
sorry,
Japor
necklace. The
snippet.
Japor snippet.
And by
Yeah.
the way, I want to say again, this scene with Jake Lloyd. I want to defend Jake Lloyd for a second. Again, he did good in this scene. I mean,
No.
I don't understand. I don't understand people.
Yeah. No. To
I've
me,
seen I've seen far worse child actors. I mean,
well,
let's get real.
yes, Aaron. Tell us more how evil children are.
I've seen far worse children actors. I didn't say they were evil.
I'm joking. No, what I said was, no, I was gonna say was the scene prior, the one where he says goodbye to 3PO. That one kind of stuck to me. Like, okay, come on, like you're acting way too kid in a commercial here, kid. But then, yeah, but then this one here with both the one with Padme and right here with Rick Ollie, where he looks like and feels like a kid in this world, getting to know so much and being honest about his emotions. And I think that's, a lot of people complained back when the prequels were later dissected about how cold some of this feels, the emotional distance. But I think those moments like that one between Padme and Anakin kind of show that, there's some there are attempts by these people to connect emotionally with one another, that they're trying to be good, and they're just kind of hemmed in and stuck
I
by the
wish
realities of the world they live in.
I wish Terrence Stamp would have said, kneel before Zod. I mean, yeah, welcome back.
Hey, welcome. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Oh my gosh, I love Terrence Stamp. So like Coruscant, Cityscape, we finally see Coruscant here. First time ever. And like
Not the first
for
time
me,
ever. It was in the special editions. They had, that's
yeah,
where
But
they
that was
first
just a
set
little
it up.
shot at night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. But
okay.
okay, so yeah, second time ever, but like in full glory. Um I got Fifth Element vibes from this immediately. Like I thought they were inspired by the Fifth Element, and I don't know if there's anything to that or not. But flying
Well,
cars,
they're both influenced by Metropolis,
yeah,
Fritz Lang. Which I mean, you look at Metropolis, you could see. I mean, three PO's design is 100% copied from Metropolis. So that's kind of where both George Lucas and Luc Besson kind of took that idea. But yeah, in some ways, this is like the nice, clean version of the Fifth Element's New York City, because there's
yeah,
no grime, there's no crummy cabs, you know.
yeah. We'll
But
see that in Attack of the Clones.
yeah,
And I think that's
mhm.
something, again, because you said there's no grime. I think that's another thing that set people kind of off about this is not my Star Wars. And if you would have been listening to George Lucas, he's like, this everything's going to be more shiny. Everything's a little bit more new and not beat in. But it does kind of, it is a sharp, juxtaposition to what we see, in A New Hope and Empire and Jedi, where things are kind of beaten
but
up and gray.
but also the Coruscant that we see in here, because we're only seeing the top levels. We're only seeing Palpatine's quarters and the Senate and all the nice and the Jedi Temple, the nice pretty spots. Episode 2 actually takes you down further in, so you start seeing more grime and nightclubs and people selling drugs and diners. So you get
Death
to see more
sticks.
where normal people live. Yeah, yes,
Death
uh,
sticks.
we'll get to them at one point. But no, but you get to see more of the grime, and then by episode 3, when after 3 years of war, you start to see the degradation, the way things are falling apart, and it's a subtle commentary. We're seeing the nice, we're seeing the foyer or the ante room, we're seeing where entertain guests. That's got to be nice and clean and pretty looking. Taking everybody up to the back where it's all grimy and stinky, and you haven't done dishes in 2 days.
It's like Cribs with Fredo here.
That's right. That's right. This is where the magic happens, according to Palpatine.
Here's Machiavellian,
Oh yeah.
playing
He,
the queen for everything she's worth.
All right, so we're flying to the Jedi Temple here. I'm going to say the best decision that Lucasfilm ever made was replacing that god awful puppet with CG Yoda. Because in the movie when it was released in the theater, that puppet looked awful. And I understand, well, he's going to be younger. It's like in a 900-year lifespan, he's 30 years younger, and but they made him look awful. But they fixed him with a CGI Yoda after episode 2.
I'm watching the puppet now. I'm watching the old version.
Are you really?
On DVD.
Oh.
It's awful.
That was the only change they made, I think, for the Blu-ray and the digital release. But we're going to see Samuel L. And I think Anakin flashes him a look when he comes in, and Samuel L's like, no, he will not be trained. Anakin flashes him a look, and that kind of sows the seeds for their conflict later on in episode 3, I think.
I remember my friends and I were really geeked out when the trailer came out, and they have the quote from Mace Windu saying, you speak at the prophecy of, and to hear about a prophecy, that made us all go, oh my God, there's a prophecy. There was just kind of a cool little element that they added to this, the one who will bring balance to the Force. Well, what does that mean?
Is that in some ways not the episode 1 version of J.J. Abrams' mystery box?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Prophecy, what does it mean? Balance of the Force. Again, it's setting up a mystery in the first movie that we hope by the third movie we get an answer. Now, the interesting thing is we knew what the answer was going to be in some ways, but
And
So
that's still a
our enjoyment
conversation
of the
that
movie didn't rely on it.
that's still a conversation we have to have. Is what does it mean for the Force to be in balance?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're going to dedicate probably 12 episodes to that if we're trying to actually unwrap it and figure it out. But um,
Okay.
yeah, we may chase off our viewers for that. What were you going to say, Fredo?
No, I was just going. Okay, the scene right here where Anakin goes in to say goodbye to Padme, and the Queen comes out to say goodbye and saying, "Well, we'll say goodbye on your behalf." I'm like, if that's not screaming to you that he's been hanging with the Queen,
Right. Yeah. No, like for all the debate, the quote unquote debate over that, it's like, oh yeah, no, I didn't.
it's
I think yeah.
obvious. It's
The
obvious.
second she decided when Padme is like on screen, I'm like, hey, that's Natalie Portman, and she's the queen. That's clearly
Mm.
her. And then like, I'm going to Tatooine with you, and it's like, well, yeah, no, you're the queen. We all
But
know.
Mm.
by the way, because we were talking, worse than she's using a kind of a little bit of an English accent and stuff like that. Did you guys see the interview with Bill Burr? How people were getting kind of calling him out on the
Yeah,
fact that
yeah.
that his character in The Mandalorian had a Boston accent, and his
Right.
response was, "But they have no problem with a British accent in Star Wars." And I'm like, touche,
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Well, no, they're not a problem with a British accent as long as it's on a Jedi Master or a villain.
Yep, I
That's
guess
where we'll
so.
accept them. That's where we'll accept them.
Hey,
Uh,
we're seeing the Senate chamber right now, and I think George has been quoted. And again, this could be him rewriting history, but he's done that a time or two.
mhm.
Um, but he has said that he established the Senate chamber in this movie so that he could have a fight sequence in it
So you could,
later on.
so you could throw the whole Senate at Yoda.
Yeah, and I like to believe that that's actually true,
Mm-hmm.
because some of this is, to the criticism, some of this is a little dry. We're talking about politics
Well,
and
but you're
trade
also
routes.
to Fredo's earlier comment about George Lucas making a commentary about democracy. In that third movie, it's literally democracy being destroyed. I mean, figuratively and literally by destroying the Senate building. So
Right.
it would make sense. I had not heard that quote, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, in the Senate here, I love the fact that we have ETs.
Yeah, there they are.
But no, I mean, so I don't know. Maybe it's like we're gonna set this up, and in the third movie we're gonna bring it all down. Yeah, it makes sense. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and again, it's this kind of stuff you're thinking about because you're gonna get to that episode 3 point. So it's interesting that because in so many ways the Palpatine's power, not at the Emperor, not Darth Sidious, but Palpatine's power relies on that Senate chamber. That's where he's at his most powerful. That's where he can read people. That's where he can know how to maneuver and how to gain for himself. Uh, and it's interesting that his final sort of triumph, not only his triumphant moment, beating, overthrowing the Republic and installing the Senate or the Empire happens there, but also later on, a literal duel to the death against the person who most embodies everything he despises, which is Yoda, happens there. No wonder Yoda wasn't going to beat him there.
And Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon just had a nice moment. It's
Mm-hmm.
like when he says to Qui-Gon, do not defy the council again.
That's one of those things that was in the novelization. They always established that Qui-Gon would have been on the council were he not so outspoken, were he not so forward thinking. They established that much like every other institution, the Jedi Council has become staid and conservative, and they got their dogma and they're not willing to shift from it. Whereas Qui-Gon is very much someone who's progressive and different minded, and he's willing to call out, the nonsense, so to speak. And that doesn't make him any friends in order to gain a position of authority.
Here Jar Jar has a nice quiet
Mm-hmm.
moment with Padme.
Yeah, that's well done. You know, it's
Lisa got a grand army. Wait, you didn't tell me you had an army.
Gears are turning.
Yeah. And here's where Palpatine's been nominated to succeed. And it's like, oh, wow, what a surprise.
But a welcome one.
Yeah,
do
exactly.
you think Padme's on to Palpatine from the get go?
No,
No.
no,
I
Yeah.
mean,
no, because
I don't think she trusts him for anything.
no, but also,
There's something that smells wrong. You can tell the way she reacts a couple times when he, said stuff about Valorum. I mean, she's been manipulated a little bit, but I don't think she totally trusts him.
but I think it's also it's part of her nature. Is she took this trip as a form of action. She can't topple the Federation who've taken over her planet, so she's coming to the Republic for help. And then, but now she knows that there's an actual army. She can't topple the Federation in Naboo without the Republic's help. She's decided like you said, her wheels are turning inside her head, and she's like, the heck with this. These people are not going to help me.
I like how too the when he plays his Sidious persona later on, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is an unexpected move, or it's too aggressive. You know,
Right.
it's like he even allows for that there, that she sort of took him by surprise. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, it still plays out the way that he wants it to, and he still wins.
Right.
Oh, oh, and here's what Anakin's look.
Yep.
By the way, did I hear people? I think it's fan casting, but it's like if there would be a Palpatine, like a young Palpatine
Movie.
series movie or whatever, and I think what are they saying? Uh, Benedict Cumberbatch. Is that what I heard? Was that the name I heard?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you. I mean, it would make sense because he can play smart and he can play slightly devious. I don't know. I'm not necessarily in the market for a Sheev prequel or origin story.
Yeah.
You know,
And by the
in some
way,
way,
is I'm sorry. By the way, in the council, does Yoda and Mace Windu just call all the shots, and everybody else just there for set dressing?
well, I
There's
believe
a
they kind
great
of say that.
robot chicken
Yeah,
episode where it's like, wait a minute, don't we get a say in this? It's just you two.
and we just sit here and look cool. No, I believe that the term is that it's well, no, Qui-Gon. Now Mundi gets a word in.
Yeah,
He gets
Kiadi gets to talk.
Yaddle does not. You know, miss. You know,
Kiadi Mundi is number 3, I guess, in the pecking order.
yeah. There's Plo Koon doesn't get a word in this time. By the way, okay, so here, this moment where when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon are arguing, and they're arguing about training, is it just me or is Obi-Wan coming off a bit childish?
Yeah,
Like I get the sense that he's trying to protect his master, whom he cares for, but at the same time, it's like, dude, like you're coming off like somebody who just got rejected, and Qui-Gon's very much in a I must smack you down mode.
Um, the oh my gosh, Master and Apprentice touches
Mm-hmm.
on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good, you guys. We're gonna do a book ranking at some point, and spoiler alert, that's gonna probably rank pretty high for me. I love that I love that book.
was that Claudia Gray that wrote that?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Might have to
yeah.
give her a holler.
Okay, here
Yeah.
you go. Here you go, Aaron. Here's your full midichlorian dissertation.
And the way that the kid asks about it too, like that's some of it. Oh god, that's awkward.
Yeah, it's like they
Or-
just handed him his lines right then. Just read these,
Yeah.
Jake. And like,
Read
I've
this
been
line.
wondering, what are midi-chlorians?
I'm
Well,
glad.
midi-chlorian.
Wow.
It's like we're on Mr. Wizard or something. It's like
No, it's like, have you ever seen like whenever you watch like a training video? Well, what
yes.
are this? And it's like that's what it sounds like.
Hey,
I'm
Timmy,
glad.
how'd you like to take a break from that lead-based paint and learn about dodgeball? Jeepers, mister.
A little bit of a Wally and the Beef
Mm,
vibe. That too.
Hey,
Yeah.
how'd you guys, let's just talk about the aesthetics here. Obviously, Coruscant is very Art Deco.
mm.
How'd you like the aesthetics of the Naboo ships, the fighters and the cruiser and all
I
that?
like them. Again, they were again. It's different from what we've seen before, and I like that. I like that they were not just simply gonna give us more of the same. Like the ships and the texts and stuff you see on Coruscant feel more like what we've gotten. So I love the idea. Okay, this is a separate culture. They value aesthetic beauties. Therefore, everything's gonna be sleek and shiny and Art Deco-ish, and okay, cool. It's different. So I'm all for it.
I one other, another thing that I would say, the costume design in this movie didn't get nearly enough credit. I don't think they even got an Oscar nomination. And she created all of these amazing outfits, obviously for the Queen, and all the people in Naboo, and the Jedi, and so on and so on and so on. It's incredible. Um, and just no,
Yeah.
it's Star Wars. We're not going to take it seriously, I guess.
Hmm. But okay, so second question that I need explained: why did they take all the ships away from the blockade? Is it because they've already conquered the planet?
No.
I mean, because I mean, of course they leave the one droid control ship up there, but you're like, okay,
Probably because
no
they have
support.
control of the surface.
Yeah, but no support ships, no backups, no. Hey, just in case something happens.
Yeah, maybe their funds are limited, and they had another.
They got another plan to go conquer.
Eh.
You know,
Well,
I gotta.
like I guess that's a valid criticism of this end sequence. At this point, the scale of it is a little underwhelming.
Hmm.
Uh, like when you see the battle droids line up on the field, you can say, "Well, oh, there's a couple hundred of them." It was an impressive sequence at the time,
Right.
uh, but now when you look at it, you're like, "Well, that's a little underwhelming."
By the
Hmm.
way, is it? And I'm gonna take it on a different path because we just had Qui Gon saying to Obi-Wan that we can't use our powers to help them, and it's like the Jedi talk about using their powers like somebody quitting smoking. Where I've quit smoking, but I only have a cigarette after meals, and I have one when I wake up in the morning. So you haven't really quit smoking. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
we can't use our powers to help her except to kill all these battle droids and to take on Darth Maul. And and it happens in the Clone Wars series as well. It's like when they go to Onderon and help Saw Gerrera, it's like, we can't use our powers to help you, but we're going to train you how to kill everybody. It's like, okay, that's a difference without a distinction, or distinction without
Well,
a difference, whatever. It just
mhm.
seems kind of, they play fast and loose with their rules, is what I'm saying.
Which, like, for example, when you saw Qui Gon try to Jedi mind trick Watto, and
That's for
Watto
not for
nearly cuts
knowledge
him
and
out.
defense. Yeah.
Right, right. That's near knowledge or defense. That he's trying to swindle some dude out of money he knows that he can't use. But it's so well known that Watto is able to say, "Oh, wait, what do you think? You're some sort of Jedi." So how common is it that they use it? That even Watto, somewhere out there in the far fringes of space, is able to go, dude, you're trying to swindle me here by trying to trick me like you're a Jedi. No, how common is the Jedi using their powers like this?
Hey, we're getting close to Dave's awkward Obi-Wan Qui-Gon look, because Padme just revealed her. There it
Yep,
is.
there you go. There you go.
Like, well, maybe. Did he know?
Maybe it was like, I mean, maybe that was kind of a look from Qui-Gon, like,
Told you.
did we miss this one? And or one of them owes the other one $5 or something.
Yeah, that could be it.
That would have been great to see, like, Obi-Wan slip Qui-Gon $5 bill.
Yeah, Republic credits. And Qui-Gon's like, no, I told you Republic credits are no good.
Well, we could shut it down. I don't know if we're gonna beat that joke. That's good. So go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say right quick, I am so glad that George got Brian Blessed in this movie. Because if you're gonna, because Boss Nass is 100% Brian Blessed.
Yeah.
As a man who grew up loves Flash Gordon, to get Prince Vultan in Star Wars is just perfect.
We're also setting up the climax of the movie. We're getting to that point. It has the same intercutting structure as the previous two movies, with Empire and Return of the Jedi. Both employed that technique, but this time it's 4 different arcs. And like Empire, I think it was 2. Return of the Jedi, it was 3.
Yeah, because you got Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon going after Darth Maul. You got the attack on the droid ship. You've got the Gungans fighting the battle droids, and then you've got the incursion into the castle.
Padme and them trying to capture the Viceroy. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like it's too much?
I think I thought it worked from the beginning. You know.
I mean, nothing feels like you don't know what's happening, and in some ways, I love the intercuts between the various battle moments. To kind of connect them together. So you're never lost as to what's happening. I mean, they do a good job here at the map scene, describing what is the goal. I mean, like the ultimate goal is capture the Viceroy. That's it. That's gonna be the move, and everything else is decoys and deflections. And then Maul shows up and draws the Jedi away to their own thing. But you know full well what the goal is, and the movie intercuts well enough so you're never unaware of what's happening or where people are standing.
I will say this, however. Jake Lloyd did a far better acting job in this movie than Natalie Portman. As much as I love Natalie Portman, and she's a great actress, but and I also will throw it out there that George Lucas can't direct actors for junk. But she is so just
Stilted.
They dubbed that over.
What's that?
They dubbed all of that over. I don't know if you've heard any of the original dialogue, but it was her voice, less monotone. And they decided they needed something more stilted and formal.
Well, I understand when she's being like in her queen garb, but I understand that. But like when she's planning a battle and she's like, and then they'll do that, it was just monotone and it without any sort of it's got to have a little George Patton in you, I mean.
Yeah. Well, though she's not trying to fire anybody up at that point. She's talking to 3 other people, and they're just strategizing. So,
and here you go with the first shot. This is the first shot we ever saw of new Star Wars in that trailer.
Yep.
But do you remember when the teaser trailer for Phantom Menace dropped, and everybody was watching it? It was like, I think it was the first video that went viral on the internet.
I literally went to a movie to watch the trailer.
Did you leave after?
No, I watched the movie.
Like, what was it? Meet Joe Black or?
No, it was the Star Trek movie that was out at the time.
Insurrection, I think, or First Contact, maybe. Okay.
Insurrection. Yeah.
Because I remember those the stories of they because it's 20th Century Fox who was releasing it at the time. They attached it to, I want to say it was Meet Joe Black or some other movie of theirs, and people were literally paying to go in, see the trailer, and walk out. And I'm like, okay, at least stay to watch your movie. You got what you came for. Everything else is lanyard, but that was what people did.
I mean, like to that point, though, I said earlier that I would watch the pod race. Like that makes the movie worth watching for me. Like the same way I feel the same way about the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like I watched the end straight through, and I know that there are fan edits, where it's like just the Darth Maul bits. No,
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, sometimes like if you only want to see the lightsaber duel, okay, cool, that works. But again, we're gonna get into how well intercut the various scenes are, the various action moments are right here between the shootouts and the duels and the battles. By the way, is it weird that that Padme's handmaids, who are all technically minors, are in the middle of this firefight?
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon's bringing a child into that battle scene.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that is. We are putting kids in danger through most of this, aren't we?
Very much so. The droids don't know they're not fighting. But I guess there's no way for Anakin not to become to show that he's not a great pilot if he doesn't get on the ship.
All right, I got a question. How do the R2 units get into those ships? That's one thing that drives me nuts about Star Wars movies from the prequels through the
Well, there you go.
sequels is
there you go.
that
They showed this one.
but it makes no sense whatsoever. And it doesn't like where's R2's shoulders?
Oh, because you only see the head
Well, the head and then the tube that he's in is flush with the
with the head.
circumference of his head. So where's his shoulders? And it's like in episode 2 and episode 3, those Jedi starfighters. It's like there's just an R2 unit head, and there's drives me that you talk about that drives me bonkers. you know, with as great of artists that they have at ILM, somebody didn't say that makes no sense.
Or at the very least, if you're going to do it, you got to show that R2's head kind of has a telescopic rotor and kind of comes up.
Or in I think it was in the sequel trilogy where you see I think in Poe's X-wing it grabs a little suction cup grabs BB-8 by the head and pulls him
Mm-hmm.
into the X-wing.
Right.
But then where does that little suction cup thing go that was on top of his head? You know what I mean? They're these little things. It's like I don't know, I much rather like in Star Wars Rebels where they just show Chopper like launch some rockets and then jump into the ship. That makes far more sense than any of
Right.
this stuff.
Well, and
But
it's also
in episode 4 though, they actually showed you putting R2 into, and they designed the X-wing so that it showed how their droid fit because they actually had to put a thing in there, not a digital creation. Anyway, okay, I'll get off. I'll shut up now.
yeah,
All the battle
but we'll
droids,
get off your lawn.
awesome
We will
shot.
get off your digital lawn.
All the battle droids, awesome shot. I
Mm.
loved that when they unload all the battle droids.
I like that when they revealed that these they recorded individual movements for each of the droids and how that was done as well. Like some of the behind the scenes stuff of this film was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And all that effort here really paid off. Again, like I said, if you take a eagle eye view of the battle, it looks like kind of a small thing, but maybe it wasn't supposed to be the biggest battle of all time either. And they really ramped things up in later movies.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, at this point, this is a minor skirmish for a single planet. Episode 2 opens up with the big opening battle of a galactic civil war, so it's levels above.
And
I always love the idea that they kept his design away from everybody, so that they didn't know until the doors opened. I think they said they only shown Ray Park's look to Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, and that moment when he opens and you see everybody kind of flinch back and just stare, that was actually an actual reaction that everybody gave because they had no idea what the heck it was. Which I love that. I love that. And, that's a good way to get George Lucas doesn't know how to direct actors, but he knows if I keep this away and I show it to them at this moment, they won't know what to think.
And double-bladed lightsaber, that was, I remember, a big geek out moment for everybody when we saw that in the trailer and such. Um, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then the choreography, stunning.
Yeah.
Probably still the best uh, lightsaber duel.
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
It's probably the least emotional impactful right up until Qui-Gon passes on or goes down, so to speak. But in terms of technically the choreography, I think this is as good as it gets in terms of lightsaber duels. As good as you can make it, probably, unless you decide to just bring, I don't know, martial artists and all the wired stunt guys from China.
Now, I talked about, the pod racing sequence shows, Anakin's aptitude. This, however, him flying the starfighter, that's like me doing my button smashing job about any video game that I play. I would drive you crazy, where I just mash buttons until, like, when that's what he's doing in here. It's just like, well, let's just push this button and see what happens, or hey, let's try spinning. That's a good trick, instead of actually in pod racing, it shows him being thoughtful and, making decisions, whereas this is just kind of like, again, me button smashing playing Smash Brothers. So I don't know what
It doesn't establish him as the best pilot in the galaxy in the same way that the other sequence does.
Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I mean, because they're saying, okay, he's being guided to by an autopilot, so it's not even like he's willingly doing this.
Yeah, really, this is R2 just doing everything.
Yeah,
R2 is the best
the
star pilot in the galaxy.
Well, we kind of knew that already, so yeah. But no, but it's a good point regarding just simply, okay, and I wonder how hamstrung George felt by his own words back in 1977 when he had to write this movie 20 years later. Like, how willing was he to make stuff fit what he already said had happened?
God help me, Jar Jar's antics. I love them during the battle.
Yeah.
He's not up to this. He's like running around and he's just like scared and a coward, and yet things are still going reasonably well for him. It's just I crack up probably every time.
By the way, was that Ben Burt that got blown up right there?
No, it was John Knoll.
John Knoll, okay.
Yeah, John Knoll was the
Naboo starfighter pilot who got blown up.
Yep, the only pilot with a mustache, with a goatee, I think. So.
Thus, he needed to go. No, it's a galaxy far, far away. We can't have goatees in it.
The droid control ships have a bit of an interesting design with the sphere shape in the center of the ring. It's almost Death Star reminiscent.
In episode 2, I was hopelessly confused.
Oh, yeah.
When they started, launching off of Geonosis, I was just like, it was not until I was like, okay, that's totally weird that centerpiece is a landing portion. I don't know. It was
right.
It was just weird.
Fun bit of trivia here: the one ascension gun that didn't work, so they sped the guy up in the next shot to make it look like he was catching up.
Mm-hmm. But I'll say that feels very Flash Gordon-y. The ascension guns.
Yeah.
It just feels like something. Okay, of course we have this.
And Batman, yeah.
And Batman has his grappling.
This is so classic. I think, like, when you're trying to design sequences like this, the tension for the audience really comes in where you're like thinking to yourself, you're watching this unfold. You're like, don't get separated.
Right.
You're like, don't let yourself get separated. Your strength is in your numbers. You can't let yourself get separated. And so, of course, they get separated. And of course, as an audience member, you're like, oh, I don't feel good about this.
Well, and this is actually mirrored in Rebels when Kanan goes up against the Grand Inquisitor.
Right.
Kanan and Ezra, and then Ezra gets knocked down a level. I mean, they really took that almost shot for shot as well. Which now looking back on, I mean, that makes that scene in Rebels that much more harrowing because it's like, oh, great, is Kanan going to get, you know,
Qui-Gon.
yeah, Qui-Gon, but it actually goes the other way. So, I love this part here that when Qui-Gon just meditates in the middle of a fight.
Right. They all have their different reactions that are completely in character. Like
Right.
Qui-Gon is meditating, connecting himself to the life side of the Force. Maul is like prowling.
Yeah, he's pacing like a tiger at a zoo. Yeah.
Looks like a tiger. And then you've got Qui-Gon, or you've got Obi-Wan, I mean, who's just like eager, young, impetuous, can't wait to get involved in it. And you can see it in his body posture. He's eager to get through the barrier, and it's perfect.
Right.
It's part of the reason that Duel is as highly regarded as it is because it's like not only choreographed perfectly, but they also each of the actors played it beautifully too.
Okay, can I ask right quick? Why did the Galactic Republic, why did the Jedi not borrow all the Gungan energy ball weapons to win the Clone Wars in 2 minutes?
Yeah, they seem pretty useful, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, one shot, one kill. I mean, I would say that's a good, and you make them big, you can take out a whole tank. That would have been a good way to, knock out at least a few of those battles.
I got to say, the production of those is probably the problem. You can't produce them quickly enough to.
And that might be there has to be a reason, but still, because they're very effective against droids.
So this was a successful movie in the sense that it made $1 gazillion, right?
Yep.
The legs on this movie were crazy. Like modern blockbusters, they don't have legs like this. They make all their money in the first 2 weeks, basically. Whereas this thing, people just kept going back to it all summer long. It's basically the last movie of its kind in that regard. Do you think people got their money's worth? Do you think they felt good about going back over and over again? Like I said, this end sequence for me makes the cost of admission worth it.
Mm-hmm. I think they did. But this way, if you're going back multiple times, there's enough in this for you to like and enjoy that you want to see it again. And then I think in some ways that's the difference when looking at a movie.
And drop money to do that. It's not like
Right.
I'm just going to open up Disney Plus and watch it as much as I want. People were dropping, $10, $15, whatever it was at the time.
Right. And then I think that's the big point, is that people were making the conscientious decision to spend time, money, effort to see this movie multiple times, as opposed to, I can, like I said, fire up the app and I'll just catch it on a Saturday afternoon that I'm bored. And adios. There goes Qui-Gon.
Lucy barked to hurt it. she heard it and barked.
Right. And then, but I also think, the last movie, actually, there's one movie that I know kind of had legs similar to this, Dave. It was Black Panther. Because that came out in February of 2018. I want to say it was 2018. And I was still rolling all through the summer. But that's more of a cultural touchstone, milestone, so to speak.
Yeah.
For most movies. No, you're right. And at this point, particularly now, if you don't make your money within the first 2-3 weeks, you're done.
By the way, isn't it interesting that George Lucas made the decision in this movie not to have Qui-Gon disappear? Now, I know he's not technically dead yet, but
I'm not dead yet.
Yeah,
I'm getting better.
But still, I mean, you don't have that disappearing body that you had with Obi-Wan, with Yoda, or even Anakin becoming a Force ghost. So that was established. That really did throw us for a loop. I think back in 1999 was like, whoa. Well, how can some Jedi disappear but others don't?
Right.
Were you guys struck by that at the time in the moment? I mean, it's since been explained in the Clone Wars. You
Mm-hmm.
know why this is and how this is and who gets to disappear. Which I don't think Ben Solo earned that, but that's okay.
Yep.
But
And
like
here
I
we go
said,
with
did
the
that
awesome
take
part.
you for a loop when you watch this?
No, no. I mean, because it's interesting. I mean, we only had the two examples of Yoda and Ben, old
Yeah, but to
Ben.
be fair, those were the only Jedi that we had up until that point. So everything we knew
Right,
about Jedi and the Force was established, and we saw a pattern.
right.
Then that
So,
pattern was
but the
broken
point
here.
being, I guess the point being that it's not like it was so egregious or so off-putting that you went, well, how come he didn't disappear? And in the moment, you just, watching, you're waiting to see what's going to happen, which is what's happening right now, which is when Obi-Wan launches himself at Darth Maul to try to take him out.
And Dave, you're right, by the way. This lightsaber battle is so much better than about any other one. I'm thinking about like even Obi-Wan and Anakin in episode 3 and the lightsaber duels in episode 2. This is light years above that.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. People have speculated as to why too, and I think part of it is that you had Ray Park
Mm-hmm.
heavily involved in helping to choreograph this, and so I think that's part of the reason it turned out as well as it did. But
Mm-hmm. And also, I think because it's interesting. They've interviewed Ewan McGregor years later, and he said they were really going at it. There was no, oh, we're gonna hold back, and he even said like there's instances where there was a guy on standby to repair all the lightsaber props that they were bending and twisting and breaking.
And why are all the Naboo pilots like members of AARP? I mean, not to be ageist or anything, but it's like their Air Force is like meets at Country Kitchen buffet for breakfast every morning or something.
I think it's very much. I mean, they're much more National Guard than Air Force. They're much more a civilian force that, if called upon, can go out and do this. They're not. I mean, Panaka tells Amidala, "Look, we're volunteers, and we do this. You know, 1 week in a month, twice, 2 weeks a year. That kind of thing. We're not a military, which also goes to show that that point in the galaxy where they're existing is different
Anybody
than
else notice a
a few years.
big design flaw as well from the Trade Federation that all you have to do is unplug it and everything goes down?
yeah. Well, they repeated that mistake, quote unquote mistake, in the Avengers movies later on, and it's like it's convenient because it wraps things up in a tidy bow. It's like now you don't have to worry about conflict still occurring. You can celebrate the victory.
But it's also a neat way to explain. Look, they're the bad guys. Bad guys don't trust the stuff they own, and so therefore they would have an off switch. And by the way, there goes Darth Maul. Bye bye. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Enjoy your
You know,
spider legs.
yeah. Cut in half. Cut in half because George wanted to make sure he could come back. Yeah.
I'm banging my head on the microphone right now because I mean, forgot all I had to do was Obi-Wan just had to do his little flippy thing and maybe lop off an arm and then kick him down the shaft. And then when he comes back in Clone Wars, it doesn't have Aaron on a Sunday morning going, "What in the heck? What? What?"
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, uh, at the time, it made sense for him to want to kill him off because he had another idea in mind for the villains going forward.
And
So.
and I'm sorry, this is one of my big criticisms of this movie is the Scooby-Doo ending. Right here where Panaka comes up and is talking to, the Nemoidians, it's like, you know, you won't like it where you're going, or I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids and that droid. It's just very much a Scooby-Doo ending.
Yeah. It's trying to wrap it up like they're done, and we know for a fact they're not, which is what makes it so interesting.
Actually, you're right. I mean, that's the whole point of this closing, which is like the name of the movie, The Phantom Menace. Palpatine is taking over, and he's literally being introduced to his future right hand man. We shall
Mhm.
watch your career with great interest. Um, the Jedi and the Republic have established that they're ripe for being knocked down. This is really super subversive stuff. But it's wrapped up in this shiny veneer where it's like, yay, everything's done and we've won.
By the way, the interesting thing about this interaction with Yoda and Obi-Wan is that it's subtle. Yoda was overruled by
Right.
somebody. Here we think in our brain Yoda was the one in charge, but he was overruled because he didn't agree with any of this. But he says, "Agree with you, the council does." And it's like,
Right.
"Oh, you were outvoted." Okay. And
But
the other,
it circles back to that earlier scene where we were joking that he and Mace are just running roughshod over people.
yeah.
So I guess not.
Um,
or maybe Mace helped outvote Yoda, and he's not happy with it.
and of course, here's where we, in at least movie canon, hear the first element of, or first utterance of the rule of two with the Sith.
Mhm.
There's always a master and an apprentice. And then, of course, you get the pan right to Palpatine when they said, which was killed, the master or the apprentice? And then, pan right to him. It's like,
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that still didn't.
they should have had,
admit
they should have
That's
had him
just-
turn. I'm surprised he didn't turn to the camera and go, "Ee," with a little thumbs up.
up or wink at the camera. Yeah,
Ding,
just
By the
like
way,
no, I mean it's blatantly obvious what's going on.
well, and that's the thing is that, I mean, if you, like us growing up with the movies, there's no surprises at anything in these three movies. There were no surprises. None.
Mhm.
We know Anakin's going to become bad. We know that, Palpatine
Yep,
becomes
there
the
is the
emperor.
pan. There's the pan.
We know all these things are going to happen. It's just, okay, the interesting thing is how it happens. And by the way, this is a great musical moment as well, where they take the Emperor's theme and put it in a major key and up tempo. Na 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 na. I was just like, that was just,
I was listening.
it was brilliant.
Just to kind of dovetail of that, I was watching this YouTube clip of a musician who kind of hinted way back when, before Rise of Skywalker, how the first four notes of Rey's theme are the exact same four notes of Palpatine's the Emperor's theme.
I saw that way back then too. Yeah, I did.
And I was like, wow, it didn't even dawn on me.
But I didn't. It might be the same. I don't know. It was always tough for me to hear. The guy even wrote it out and everything like that. Just, it's not.
It's not easy to pick out.
Yeah.
By the way, there's Yaddle. There's Yaddle. Yaddle's one appearance.
He gets the glowing orb of destiny here, as you do.
Oh, yeah. Soon to be seen in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's right. Like I said, I mean, the movie, like any movie, has its flaws.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way that it starts off, it's like setting up a lesson. If you're a teacher, it's like setting up a lesson for your kids, and just you have a really poor setup. I mean, the way this movie is set up, it could set you in a bad mood because it's not starting off like Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
And neither does Empire Strikes Back. But anyway, so I think that leaves a little bit bad taste in the mouth. I think the other thing that it had going was that everybody had to wait 15 years to see Star Wars, and they were expecting Star Wars, and they got something a little bit different.
Their Star Wars, like you said.
Yeah. So, I guess the only last thing I would say is I would encourage anybody who, really didn't like Phantom Menace or felt like, they were, shafted or something like that, is just, take a day and just watch it and just try to separate, some of those things that bugged you at first, and try to figure out why they bugged you. And maybe you don't like the movie. That's fine. You don't have to. But like I said, I still think it's the best of the 3 prequels.
Yeah, we've disagreed on that in past episodes, and when we get to the other prequels, we can delve into it deeper. But I agree with you regarding taking time and going back. It's surprising. I was listening to an album the other day that I hadn't listened in a long time, and I was surprised how much I was enjoying it. And it's like I don't remember liking it when it came out back when, but that's the reality. Sometimes time adds a patina to things, and it allows you to assess them in a different way. You know, back in 1999, this was the most hyped, most anticipated movie ever, and in some ways, it was a victim of a lot of expectations. There was no way it was going to live to all of that. But like I always said, there's a point where every movie that the biggest, greatest, most amazing thing ever has to go on a shelf and just be a movie. And it's amazing when you either fire up on the app or you grab it off the shelf and throw it on the Blu-ray or DVD or VHS or Betamax if you have that player. How stuff that you didn't see before kind of pops out now, how themes that you missed kind of connect, and how you come to appreciate it in a different light.
Dave,
So sometimes you got to grow up too.
Dave, that's the title of the episode. Time puts a patina on things. Final thoughts, Dave, on the Phantom Menace.
My thoughts are: a story doesn't have to adhere to particular rhythms or tropes just because that's what other movies have done. And that's what I like about this movie. Is that people complain that it has no clear protagonist. I like that about it. It's fixated on politics. I like that. It has an odd structure. I like that, and so forth and so on. It's at its core an independent movie from an independent director at what was an independent studio at the time. So you really, honestly, it's absolutely art. My thoughts are that the Phantom Menace is actually everyone's attachment to their old Star Wars, since it prevents them from enjoying the newer things. And you don't have to like this movie, but I very much do.
You said people don't like the politics of it. I said it at the outset. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna bookend it. People complaining about this movie, and actually the subsequent the following 2 movies are about politics. That's like going on a merry-go-round and complaining that you got sick. It's like you're going to be spinning around again. If you knew any of the backstory of that was put out there in Bantha tracks and stuff like that, you knew that's what happened. Actually, I could, if I have the, let me see, do I have it here? I'm looking for a book. I can't find the book, but it actually goes through the backstory of like Palpatine weaseling his way through politics to become emperor. So, but hey, there's a lot of reasons why we don't like movies, and like I said, not everybody has to. But thanks everybody for following along with the Phantom Menace, and if you let us know what you think about the Phantom Menace after you've listened to this podcast. Hit us up on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever. Argue with us. You can take our name in vain if you want to. If you disagree with anything we said, we like those conversations. But you can also find our podcast on basically anywhere you go find a podcast. And if you can't find it there, let us know and we'll see if we can get it there, or we'll tell you where you can get our podcast. But if you're listening to it, you probably found it anyway. But tell your friends. So anything else for the good of the order, guys? Hearing
nope, can't
nothing.
wait for episode 2.
Yep, we'll have next one up, episode 2, and we'll talk about more bad acting and
more sand.
But I still like the movie, though. It was bad acting, but I still like the movie. So because it's Star Wars, it's like pizza. But anyway, all right, cool. Well, with that, we will say who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
And everybody have a great week. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Later.
McConkey.